Devguru was a hard-ass renegade crew within the SEALs, and they wanted it to stay that way. They did not want to civilize anybody. They did not want to evolve or change. And I knew where I was and what I was getting myself into. This crew was responsible for the most dangerous tip of the spear missions. It was a white man's underworld, and these guys needed to know how I would act if someone started to fuck with me. They needed assurances I could control my emotions, and once I saw through their language into the greater purpose, I could not be offended by their act. Look, I have experienced racism my entire life, I replied, and there is nothing any of you fuckers can say to me that I have not heard 20 times before. But be ready, because I am coming right the fuck back at you. At the time, they seemed to like the sound of that. Trouble is, when you are a black guy giving it back, it usually doesn't go over nearly as well. I will never know why I did not receive my orders for green team, and it doesn't matter. We can't control all the variables in our lives. It's about what we do with opportunities revoked or presented to us that determine how a story ends. Instead of thinking I crushed the screening process once, I can do it again. I decided to start at zero and screen for Delta Force, the Army's version of Devguru instead. Delta selection is rigorous, and I had always been intrigued by it due to the elusive nature of the group. Unlike SEALs, you never heard about Delta. The screening for Delta selection included an IQ test, a complete military resume including my qualifications and war experiences, and my evaluations. I pulled all of that together in a few days, knowing that I was competing against the best guys from every military branch, and that only the cream would be extended an invitation. My Delta orders came through in a matter of weeks. Not long after that, I landed in the mountains of West Virginia, ready to compete for a spot among the Army's very best soldiers. Strangely, there was no yelling or screaming in the Delta void. There were no muster and no OICs. The men that showed up there were all self-starters, and our orders were chalked on a board hanging in the barracks. For 3 days, we were not allowed to leave the compound. Our focus was rest and acclimatization. But on day 4, PT started up with a basic screening test which included 2 minutes of push ups, 2 minutes of sit ups, and a timed 2-mile run. They expected everyone to meet a minimum standard, and those that didn't were sent home. From there, things got immediately and progressively more difficult. In fact, later that same night, we had our first up road march. Like everything in Delta, officially the distance was unknown, but I believed it was about an 18-mile course from start to finish. It was cold and very dark when all 160 of us took off, strapped with around 40-pound rucksacks. Most guys started out in a slow march, content to pace themselves and hike it out. I took off hot, and in the first quarter mile left everyone behind. I saw an opportunity to be uncommon and seized it. And I finished about 30 minutes before anybody else. Delta selection is the best orienteering course in the world. For the next 10 days, we hammered PT in the morning and worked on advanced land navigation skills into the night. They taught us how to get from A to B by reading the terrain instead of roads and trails on a map. We learned to read fingers and cuts, and that if you get high, you want to stay high. We were taught to follow water. When you start reading the land this way, your map comes alive, and for the first time in my life, I became great at orienteering. We learned to judge distance and how to draw our own topographic maps. At first, we were assigned an instructor to tail through the wild lands, and those instructors hold us. For the next few weeks, we were on our own. Technically, we were still practicing, but we were also being graded and watched to make sure we were moving cross country instead of taking roads. It all culminated with an extended final exam in the field that lasted 7 days and nights if we even made it that far. This was not a team effort, each of us was on our own to use our map and compass to navigate from one waypoint to the next. There was a Humvee at every stop, and the cadres, our instructors and evaluators, there noted our time and gave us the next set of coordinates. Each day was its own unique challenge, and we never knew how many points we would have to navigate before the test was done. Plus, there was an unknown time limit that only the cadres were privy to. At the finish line, we were not told if we passed or failed. Instead, we were directed to one of two covered Humvees. The good truck looked like took you to the next camp. The bad truck motored back to base where you would have to pack your shit and head home. Most of the time, I didn't know if I made it for sure until the truck stopped. By day 5, I was one of roughly 30 guys still in consideration for Delta Force. There were only 3 days left, and I was rocking every test, coming in at least 90 minutes before drop dead time. The final test would be a 40-mile back kicker of a land navigation, and I was looking forward to that. But first I had work to do. I splashed through washes, hopped up sloped woodlands, and rambled along ridge lines point to point until the unthinkable happened. I got lost. I was on the wrong ridge. I double checked my map and compass and looked across a valley to the correct one, due south. Roger that. For the first time, the clock became a factor. I didn't know the drop dead time but knew I was cutting it close. So I sprinted down a steep ravine but lost my footing. My left foot jammed between two boulders. I rolled over my ankle and felt it pop. Poop. The pain was immediate. I checked my watch, gritted my teeth, and laced my boot tight as quickly as I could, then hobbled up a steep hillside to the correct ridge. On the final stretch to the finish, my ankle blew up so bad I had to unite my boot to relieve the pain. I moved slow, convinced I would be sent home. I was wrong. My Humvee unloaded at the second to last base camp of Delta selection, where I iced my ankle all night, knowing that thanks to my injury, the next day's land navigation test was likely beyond my capability. But I didn't quit. I showed up, fought to stay in the mix, but missed my time of one of the early checkpoints, and that was that. I didn't hang my head because injuries happen. I would given it everything I had, and when you handle business like that, your effort will not go unnoticed. Delta cadres are like robots. Throughout selection, they did not show any personality. But as I was getting ready to leave the compound, one of the officers in charge called me into his office. Coggins, he said, extending his hand, you are a stud. We want you to heal up, come back and try again. We believe you will be a great addition to Delta Force someday. But when I came to from my second heart surgery in a billowing cloud of anesthesia. I looked over my right shoulder to an IV drip and followed the flow into my veins. I was wired to the medical mind. Beeping heart monitors recorded data to tell a story in a language beyond my comprehension. If only I were fluent, maybe I would know if my heart was finally whole, if there would be ever be a someday. I placed my hand over my heart and closed my eyes and listened for clues. After leaving Delta, I went back to the SEAL teams and was assigned to land warfare as an instructor instead of a warrior. At first, my morale flagged. Men who lacked my skills, commitment, and athletic ability were in the field two countries, and I was moved in no man's land, wondering how it had all gone so haywire so quickly. It felt like I would hit a glass ceiling, but had it always been there, or did I slide it into place myself? The truth was somewhere in between. I realized from living in Brazil, Indiana, that prejudice is everywhere. There is a piece of it in every person and each and every organization, and if you are the only in any given situation, it's on you to decide how you are going to handle it, because you can't make it go away. For years I used it to fuel me, because there is a lot of power in being the only. It forces you to use your own resources and to believe in yourself in the face of unfamiliar scrutiny. It increases the degree of difficulty, which makes every success that much sweeter. That's why I continually put myself in situations where I knew I would encounter it. I had off being the only I fed off being the only one in a room. I brought the war to people and watched them and watched my excellence explode small minds. I didn't sit back and cry about being the only. I took action, said go fuck yourself, and used all the prejudice I felt as dynamite to blow up those walls. But that kind of raw material will only get you so far in life. I was so confrontational, I created needless enemies along the way. And I believe that's what limited my access to the top SEAL teams. With my career at a crossroads, I did not have time to dwell on those mistakes. I had to find higher ground and turn the negative I had created into another positive. I did not just accept land warfare duty, I was the best instructor I could possibly be, and on my own time, I created new opportunities for myself by launching my Ultra Quest, which revived my stalled career. I was right back on track until I learned I had been born with a broken heart. Yet there was a positive side to that too. Tucked into my post on hospital bed, I looked to be fading in and out of consciousness as conversations between doctors, nurses, my wife, and mother blew into one another like white noise. They had no clue that I was wide awake the whole time, listening to my wounded heartbeat and smiling inside, knowing I finally had definitive scientific proof, and I was as uncommon as any motherfucker who has ever lived. Challenge number 9. This one is for the unusual motherfuckers in the world. A lot of people think that once they reach a certain level of status, respect, or success, that they have made it in life. I am here to tell you that you always have to find more. Greatness is not something that if you meet it once, it stays with you forever. That shit evaporates like a flash of oil in a hot pan. If you truly want to become uncommon amongst the uncommon, it will require sustaining greatness for a long period of time. It requires staying in constant pursuit and putting out unending effort. This may sound appealing but will require everything you have to give and then some. Believe me, this is not for everyone because it will demand singular focus and may upset the balance in your life. That's what it takes to become a true overachiever. And if you are already surrounded by people who are at the top of their game, what are you going to do differently to stand out? It's easy to stand out amongst everyday people and be a big fish in a small pond. It is a much more difficult task when you are a wolf surrounded by wolves. This means not only getting into Wharton Business School but being ranked number one in your class. It means not just graduating but becoming enlist honor man army ranger school, then going out and finishing Badwater. Towards the complacency you feel gathering around you, your co-workers and teammates in that rare air. continue to put obstacle in front of yourself, because that's where you will find the friction that will help you grow even stronger. Before you know it, you will stand alone. That's the complacency you feel gathering around you. Thank you. That's it for the day.